In this video, I'm going to go over using RustDesk self-hosting on a Libre Computer Le Potato. For the past several years, I've used AnyDesk with clients of mine for remote assistance. AnyDesk came in super handy around COVID. I found AnyDesk to be super easy to use. The fact that it runs portably is great. Guiding users into downloading and running it was pretty straightforward. Now there were some hiccups here and there with getting to the download link, and initiating connections could be a little challenging with users with very low computer skills. But overall, I've been pretty happy with how AnyDesk functions. It also seemed pretty reasonably priced, though I got an email from AnyDesk recently asking me about my use case and what license will work for me best. It seems like now the cost is about doubled. The solo is $22.90 per month, so that's $275 a year. So they're essentially doubling the cost. I had posted on Reddit about the fact that I use AnyDesk, and someone recommended I check out RustDesk, being free for self-hosted. I had wondered about how easy it could be to onboard new users and actually use, especially in a self-hosted use case. Though AnyDesk emailing me and the realization that the cost is going to double when my annual subscription ends got me more serious into looking at RustDesk. So in this video, I'm going to go over how I've initially got RustDesk self-hosting to work on a Libre Computer Le Potato. Now you might wonder what a Le Potato is. It's a $35 single board computer, somewhat comparable to a Raspberry Pi 3B+. So we start out with imaging an SD card with a Le Potato Debian image. I use the Debian 12 base ARM64 image. You can get it from this link. Specifically, here's the link to the download. I use 7-zip to extract the .xz file and Rufus to write the image to an SD card. Here's a link to 7-zip and Rufus. You insert the SD card into the Le Potato, power it on, and you'll need to log into it as root to begin with. So you use root as username and root as password. You then need to set a new root password. For the sake of this example, I'm just going to use root pwd for the root password. You want to then run sudo apt update, then sudo apt install OpenSSH-server, then sudo add user. You then want to set a user password. For the sake of this example, I'm just going to use user pwd. Next, you need to run the following command to give user sudo rights. Sudo usermod -ag sudo user. Now at this point we can go headless with the server, accessing it via SSH from another PC. I'll be using PuTTY from a Windows PC. You can get PuTTY from this page. Specifically, here's a link to the portable executable. So I've already downloaded that, and I've already imaged the SD card, and I have it in the Le Potato right now. The default hostname after imaging the SD card for the Le Potato is Debian-12-AML-S905X-CC. So we type that in for the host name and hit open. We click accept and we log in as user, and then user pwd. I'm now signed in as the user. We now need to install uncomplicated firewall. So that's this command here. Sudo apt install ufw. Type in my password, Y and enter. We now need to run the two following commands to open up ports 21114 through 21119 TCP and port 21116 UDP. So we copy and paste those commands in. We also want to allow access to the server via SSH on the internal network. Now this assumes 192.168.1.0/24 subnet. So we're going to run this command, copy and paste. Now we're going to enable the firewall. Copy and paste. Command may disrupt existing SSH connections. Proceed with operation. Yes. Now we need to set a host name and static IP address for our server. So we're going to run the following command. Copy and paste that in. And this right here is the current host name. I'm going to change this to be rustdesk-server. Control X, Y, and enter. We're going to run this command next. And we need to add this second line to this file. So this 127.0.1.1 RustDesk server, I'm going to copy that. And second line, paste it in. Control X, Y, and enter. Now we're going to run this command IP-link show. And we see right here END0 in my case. This is going to determine the name of the Ethernet interface. In my case, the Ethernet interface is named END0. I then run these commands. Copy and paste. So this is going to move this 10-en-dhcp.network file into a .bak file. Just give it a different name. So it's going to move it from this file name to this other file name, essentially disabling it. Then I'm going to copy and paste the next line there. This is going to open a new file called 10-static-end0.network. And within this file, we want to copy and paste the following contents. Now this once again assumes 192.168.1.0/24 as the subnet. In your case, it might be different. So we have the name of the Ethernet interface there. I'm going to be putting this on static IP address 192.168.1.100. Gateway is 192.168.1.1, the IP address of my router. And we're using Google for our DNS server. Control X, Y, and enter. And now we want to reboot the server. So we're going to type in sudo reboot now, copy and paste that in, and hit enter. So our server is now rebooting. So now what we want to do is we want to access our router's web-based interface and put the server in the DMZ so that it's directly accessible from the internet. On my particular router, I need to go to Advanced, NAT Forwarding, DMZ. I can check the enable box, enter the IP address, and hit save. So now the server is in the DMZ and is directly accessible on the internet. Now we're ready to actually install RustDesk. So we're going to run these 5 commands here. This will download an install script, and this will make that install script executable. This will install an update script and then make that update script executable. Then we'll run the install script. So let's copy and paste these in one by one. There's our install script. Make it executable. Our update script. Make it executable. And then we'll run through the install script. Enter our user password. Choose your preferred connection method, auto-resolve current WAN IP, or enter your DNS domain. We're going to type in 1 and enter. Now we're asked, please choose if you want to download configs and install HTTP server. I'm going to select no to that, so 2 and enter. So it now says your IP DNS address is, and then it shows the public IP address. Your public key is, and then it gives us the public key. And it says install RustDesk on your machines and change your public key and IP or DNS name to the above. We press a key to exit. So we want to make a note of that public IP address and public key, as that information will need to be put into the client software of RustDesk on the client end. You can also determine your public IP address by running curl space ipconfig.me. You can run that either from a Windows command prompt or from the Linux terminal. And now we need to discuss getting Windows end users onboarded with RustDesk. First, we need to power on the RustDesk server. Now it's already on. We're going to ping it to make sure that it's up. So I ran curl ifconfig.me to get my public IP address, and I pinged that public IP address, and I am getting a reply. We now need the user to go to this link here to download the RustDesk client. So I'm going to copy and paste that into a browser window. Now what I do like about RustDesk is this warning, you may be being scammed. I wish AnyDesk would do that, because this would probably save people a lot of grief if they get this notice that this tool might be being used illegitimately. So we want to click on the Windows x86-64 64-bit executable. So we click on the exe link there. That will download RustDesk. So we've downloaded the RustDesk client and we've moved it to the desktop. Here it is right here. We're going to double click on it to run it. And we're going to click on the 3 lines at the top right of the window to open settings. Under settings on the left side, we're going to click on network. ID relay server will appear on the right side. So basically input the values for the server and the key that you saw when the installation occurred. So I'm going to copy and paste those in and then hit apply and then close the settings. And now we're back to the home screen, and we see at the bottom it says ready with a green dot next to it. So the client should see a ready status at the bottom in RustDesk and be all set for a connection attempt. On the support end, perform these same tasks and then click on the home button at the top left. Get the user's desktop ID enter that ID in the Control Remote Desktop field, and then click on the Connect button. Now I have a test computer right now tethered to my smartphone, so it's not on the same network that I'm on the support side here. I'm going to enter the ID of that computer and attempt to connect. So enter the ID and click on the Connect button. If the user on the other end is running the Windows client, they're going to see a green Accept and Elevate button as well as a blue Accept button. If they know their admin password, they should click on the green button so you can run with elevated privileges. If they don't know their admin password, then they should just click on the blue Accept button. You'll then be assisting them without local admin rights. If they're running on Linux, they're just going to have a blue Accept button. In this case, I'm connecting to a computer running Linux. I've clicked on Accept on the client side, and now I'm in. I like to use Scale Adaptive to see the whole desktop. Now let's consider a refined auto configuration procedure. So when you've configured the network settings in RustDesk, close it, then browse to App Data Roaming RustDesk Config and open rustdesk2.toml with Notepad. Example contents will appear as follows. This is where the server settings are kept. We have the rendezvous server, we have the key, the relay server. So what we want to do is we want to delete the local IP address line. So if we delete this line from this rustdesk2.toml file, so we save it without this last line, and if we were to copy this rustdesk2.toml file to App Data Roaming RustDesk Config on a new client, that will essentially configure the client for our needed settings, our server, IP address, as well as the key. So what you want to do is once you have your server settings and key configured, open this rustdesk2.toml file, delete this line for local IP address, save that file to the desktop, make sure that the RustDesk executable is also on the desktop, and then we want to create this configure.cmd file. What this file is going to do is it's going to run RustDesk, it's going to wait 5 seconds, it's going to close RustDesk, it's going to copy in the configuration file to app data rustdesk config, and then it's going to rerun RustDesk. 5 seconds later, it'll close the command prompt window. So that's an automated way of pushing out those server settings and key setting. So I'm going to close the client. I'm going to go to App Data RustDesk Config. I'm going to copy that TOML file and paste it on the desktop. I'm going to open it with Notepad. I'm going to remove the local IP address line. File save, close it. And then I'm going to right-click on the desktop and go to New, Text Document. I'm going to call this configure.cmd. Click Yes to change the file type. Right-click on it, go to Edit. I'm going to copy and paste this script in. Copy and paste. And then save and close that. Now these 3 files, we're going to move them into a folder called RustDesk. So I'm going to right-click, New, Folder, RustDesk. I'm going to move these files into that folder. And then we're going to compress this folder into a self-extracting executable. We're going to use 7-zip to do that. I right-click on the folder, go to 7-zip, Add to Archive. We want to check the Create SFX Archive. I'm going to change the file name here to rdins for RustDesk install. You can optionally encrypt those files by entering an encryption password. I'll pass on that for now and just click OK. We can also optionally use Resource Hacker to change the icon of this exe for branding purposes. So we save the executable as rdins.exe. We can then place that executable on our website, preferably the root level. So now our refined end-user instructions turn into having them go to that link. That file will download, and when they run it, they'll be prompted to extract that folder to their desktop or wherever they've downloaded it to. They'll likely have downloaded it to their Downloads folder, so the RustDesk folder will be saved to users, their username, Downloads, RustDesk. Now I have further instructions here on how to guide them for Microsoft Edge as well as Google Chrome, and then continuing on. However, it's a little bit tricky when it comes to doing all this in a browser, because a browser is going to complain about the executable file being unknown. There's going to be lots of hoops to jump through. An easier way of doing this would be to have them download the file and run it using the command prompt and curl. To do that effectively, we're going to have to create a script that they'll download, and then they'll run that script, and that script will be what will download the executable, run the executable. They'll then extract the contents of that executable to the RustDesk folder, and then the script will change directory into that RustDesk folder and then run the config.cmd file to configure the client. So we copy and paste this into a new file. We'll call this rdins.cmd. Right-click, edit, and paste this in. So our variables here are the URL to that executable file, the executable file's name, the name of the folder that executable extracts to, which is just RustDesk. So it uses curl to download that executable from the URL. Assuming it's successful, it's going to then run that executable. The user will extract it. After they're done extracting it, it's going to change directory into the RustDesk folder they just extracted, and then it's going to run configure.cmd. Configure.cmd is going to then run RustDesk. 5 seconds later, it'll close RustDesk. It'll then copy in that rustdesk.do.toml file. That will then set all the server settings properly, our server IP address and the key. Then it will relaunch RustDesk. So we'll save this script, close. And now if these two files are on the root of your website, they can then more easily download and get RustDesk going from the command prompt. So the end user instructions then turn into this. They press the Windows key and the R key, type in CMD and hit enter. They then run this command. So they'll type in this command, hit enter, rdins.cmd will download and run. They'll eventually see a pop-up for 7-zip self-extracting archive. They need to click on extract. Enter a password to decrypt that compressed archive optionally if you did set up that file to be encrypted. The configuration script will then run, open RustDesk, close it, configure it, which will copy the rustdesk2.toml file to appdate a RustDesk config. Then it will relaunch RustDesk. Once it reopens, they can proceed with giving you the ID number and then proceed with you connecting to their computer. Now, it may be beneficial at this point to create a desktop shortcut to the RustDesk executable for the user to quick access it again at a later time. Now, additional consideration of the Le Potato is having an on-off button because we're going to be running it headless. We can rig up a switch to turn it off and have another switch rigged up to turn it on. We'll first consider the power off scenario. Now back on the server, we want to run sudo apt install libgpiod-dev. So copy and paste that in, type in our password. We then want to run nano sdb.c. That will create our C source code. We're going to then copy and paste this C program into nano. Copy, paste, Control X, Y, and enter. This was a C program I had ChatGPT write that will use GPIO 83. When GPIO 83 is pulled to ground by the switch engaging, it's going to run shutdown-H now to shut down the system. And it's going to be using interrupts instead of polling to be efficient. So we run this command to compile that C program into an executable. Now to be able to access GPIO without sudo, you need to run this command here. That is if you want to test it. So with that command entered, we can then run the program. ./sdb. So it says monitoring GPIO line 83, press Control C to exit. So if we take a look at the board itself here, GPIO 83 and ground are going to be here. So if these two pins are connected to each other, that should trigger that shutdown-H now. Let's see what happens when I press that button. Now it says here shutting down the system. GPIO 83 shorted to ground. Ping 192.168.1.100. We're not getting a reply from it. And we see our putty session closed. So I've unplugged power, powered it back on. It's going to boot back up and we will get back into it. We need to next create a script that will start the program at boot. So let's see if we can reconnect now. Log in as user, enter our password. So to create a script that runs at system startup on the Le Potato running Debian 12 to allow GPIO access without sudo and to run that C program to monitor for shutdown, we're going to follow these steps. We're going to create a monitoring script. In this case, SDB stands for shutdown button. So I'm going to copy and paste this in. Enter our password. We're going to add the following content to that file. So this may not be needed because this might be running as root. But just in case, that's going to allow GPIO access without sudo. And then it's going to run our script. Now in this case, I've created username user, so it's going to be running from home user, and then SDB is the executable. So ./SDB, Control X, Y, and enter. We need to make that script executable, so we copy and paste that line in. Create a systemd service, copy and paste that command. We're going to add the following content to that file. So we have a name of the service, what it's going to be running. User is root. Control X, Y, and enter. We're going to enable the service. Copy and paste that. Enable the service so it starts on boot. Copy and paste that in. Start the service immediately without rebooting. Copy and paste. And optionally check the status of the service. So copy and paste. Enter. And we see right there, home user SDB. I'm going to press Q to exit. So now, if I press the off button that I've designated, the system should shut down. I'm going to press it now. And I see from the LEDs on the system, I just have a red LED now, so it should be off. So we'll restart our session, log in as user, enter our password. Now, as far as the power on is concerned, if we look at the board again, powering on is relatively easy. We need to just connect these two pins together. So when the system is off, if these two pins are connected with the system off but connected to power, it will turn back on. I actually already have those pins rigged up with a momentary push button switch. I'm going to power off, and I see it just powered off. So if I push my on button, which is going to connect ground and receive, I just did, and I saw a brief flicker of the green LED status light. So that tells me it turned on and is going to boot up in a moment here. I see the green LED on, and the blue LED is blinking, indicating it's booting back up. I'm going to ping it again, and there it is replying. So as for the hardware to get that rigged up, the actual switches and wiring. So here's an example of momentary tactile push button switches. I use two of these. I feed the legs through this particular case through the holes there. I bend the legs to hold the switch in place. And then what I do is I use some DuPont cable to connect those legs to the pins. Carefully reassemble the case, and then you have a quick and easy way to rig up power buttons to the outside of the case. So that addresses the power on and power off in the Headless server setup. Now, if you sign into the server, not on a PuTTY session, but actually on the server itself, you might see a bunch of UFW block messages in the terminal. Those can be annoying if you're trying to run commands on the server. So this command here will suppress those. And then if you want to view those UFW log messages, you can run this command here. You can also save those to a file and open the file with this command here. So let's just see that in action. I'm going to PuTTY in so we can at least see those messages. Log in as user. User PWD is my password in this case. Copy and paste this command in. Enter our password. And now we see all the UFW block messages of other machines trying to connect. Of course, these are all blocked. Now let's consider pointing to your self-hosted RustDesk server from your website. If you have a website and wish to point your self-hosted server with a subdomain of your website, then you could add an A record pointing to your public IP address. That way your RustDesk server configuration won't need to be manually updated on the client end if the IP address of your home internet connection changes, which for most providers is probable, as you probably don't have a static IP address from your internet service provider. Then, when your public IP address changes, you just need to manually update the A record as needed. There are undoubtedly more slick options out there, such as DDNS or external hosting, though for casual use and no added hosting cost, if you already have a website, the A record update option could work okay. Now in my use case, I'm only going to be running the server when I need to help someone remotely, otherwise my RustDesk server will be offline. So I've also included ODF files of end-user instructions for both Windows and Linux that you can update for your use case. The explanation of how to do this for Linux on the client side is in the master guide that I have linked in the description. Here it is right here. I'll quickly just describe though how it works. I'm taking the app image approach. Ultimately, you're going to have two files on your web server. You're going to have rdins.sh and rustdesk.tar.gz.gpg. All the end user will need to do on the Linux side is open up a terminal and run these three commands. What that will do is that will download the compressed RustDesk archive, which will include the app image, a configuration script, and the server settings. So that's all explained in this master guide that I have. Again, link is in the description. But let's just take a quick look at the guides I also created in LibreOffice. You can fine-tune these to your needs. So here's the Windows guide. You would then just need to replace a screenshot of the command in CMD for your use case. So update this command accordingly, and then you can take a screenshot and then paste that in there. Everywhere where I have highlighted in yellow, you can replace for your use case. So this is a landscape document that you can have the end user download and print off to follow along how to get the client working in Windows on their end. As for the Linux client, they can just print this off and follow along. Again, it's just 3 commands: the wget, chmod to make the script executable, then they run the script, and it should be fairly automated from there. This was tested in Ubuntu 24.04 LTS. I see Wayland's support is working, though it's noted that it's experimental. So again, in this case, everywhere where I have highlighted in yellow, you would just replace for your use case, as well as add a screenshot of the terminal commands for your specific case. So that about sums up just tinkering around with RustDesk and running it self-hosted on your home internet connection. Seems to be a great alternative to paying $275 to AnyDesk for their lowest tier solo plan. I'm certainly going to try it out with my clients and see how well it works. Most of my clients are on Windows, though I do have some running Linux, and this is actually a pretty easy procedure, on the Linux side especially. I recall with AnyDesk there were a lot more hoops to jump through getting it working on Linux, but overall it looks like a pretty good alternative to AnyDesk.